The Mike Brown verdict just came in. I mean, people call it a verdict, but it never even went to trial. It was just the grand jury basically knocked the case out before it even started.
Right.
What are your thoughts on it?
I mean, I probably feel as outraged as other people, but I think I've been down this road before with a lot of other cases that we protested in New York. Diallo, Doris Mond, some of the names that are less familiar to the present young generation, but very familiar to the 80s and the 90s babies. I think that what's interesting about what's developed is that we've gotten to the point where people don't even want to take their chances. And by people, I shouldn't even say people. I should say the government doesn't even want to take its chances in court anymore. They're just getting them at the grand jury indictment. You know, so if there's no indictment, there's no need to present evidence. There's no need to see evidence. There's no need to call up witnesses. There's no need to find out who witness 10 is, test the credibility of witnesses, test the credibility of the officer. I mean, I think when people saw the actual pictures, when the pictures were released, I think people were even more offended. Like, it was one thing when people saw that Zimmerman and Trayvon had obviously had some kind of altercation due to the injuries, and still, you know, there were a lot of questions about what had happened there, why he was following him. But when you saw Officer Darren Wilson, it looked like nothing had happened to him. It looked like he had literally been at a frat party the night before, only he hadn't been at a frat party. He killed an unarmed kid who was in front of him, who was 30, 40 feet away, who had already been shot 4 times. And he felt like he needed to deliver a headshot at that particular stage in the altercation to protect his life. And I really don't think that you find many people who believe that. Even the people who are opposed and support Darren Wilson, even they probably don't believe that. They just feel like they don't want, you know, this police officer to go to prison for killing what they see as an expendable human being. And I think that gets to the heart of the case now. You know, there are just some people that people see as less than human. And it's unfortunate because, you know, the racists of the world will decry that. They think that black and Latino people are the biggest racists in the world, as if race had to do with anything except institutionalized power. You know, making fun of somebody because of they're of a certain ethnicity is one thing, but being able to control and a disproportionate quote unquote justice system, a prison system, you know what I mean? If you think about it, what are the majority or what are the huge percentage of people in there for? Drugs. You know what I mean? At the same time, we're talking about crack, cocaine, heroin, drugs that kill people. But a lot of people sell things that kill people. What if all the individuals who were in the cigarette business were arrested for the same thing? They kill more people than all those things put together. I mean, it's just a question of targeting specific individuals who we know have the least amount of power in society, which is why I always said that irrespective of how powerless we feel, we really are a powerful people. We have economic power. We have a political power that's been locked away for a long time. And I think that it's totally possible to make the system or the government see that. It's just a question of being prepared for that sacrifice. You know, I've been to a lot of marches, Vlad. I've been to a lot of these meetings in the community where people say, what do we need to do to get police to stop shooting us? And the bottom line is that unless you're from the community, unless you understand our people, you should have no business policing us. You know, if you are not from here, I mean, that was one of the biggest reasons. I mean, the backstory behind the fuck the police, the horrific sentiment in Los Angeles that some of these ignorant citizens were appalled by. Oh my God, how can they say fuck the police? Okay, until you realize that the city of Los Angeles specifically bust in people like police officers from like Alabama to come work in the black community, or people that would have very, very little diversity training that will come in. Somebody from the most racist city in Mississippi, you're going to send them to police Compton. Like, you know what you're doing. You're repressing people. You're not helping them. You know, this whole image and everything works in collusion with that. Our whole media is pretty much, in my mind, a collaborator. You know, all the cop shows, how often do they show a police officer being prosecuted for something they do wrong? And I never forget, I was arguing with a police officer at the Amadou Diallo march like 10, 15 years ago. And he says to me, why are you against police officers? Did I do that to that guy? I didn't shoot anybody. I said, no, but I bet if your partner did, you wouldn't turn him in. I said, look at your partners, all your people around you. Tell me you turned them in for shooting at somebody. And he didn't say nothing because he knew I was right. And that's the sad truth, you know? And I said it before on this program, and I'm going to say it again, Vlad. I think one of the most unfortunate circumstances, one of the most racist point of views that I've seen come forth out of this is when people say, oh, well, y'all niggas be killing each other and nobody cares. When did you decide, or when did racist white people decide the collective feelings of Black and Latino people? When did that happen? When did you get to jump into a mother's heart and think that we don't care about our children? I think that is extremely telling because it's a dehumanizing sentiment. It's a dehumanizing thing to say. You people are so disgusting, so low. You're so subhuman that you don't even love your children the way white people love their children. How could you say that? How could you think that? Of course, when anybody gets shot, it doesn't matter who it is. If it's not by a police officer, that mother's heart is broken. That father's heart is broken. The people who love that person are in pain. How could you discount that pain and that suffering? The difference is, idiots of the world, that if the person, the gang member, or whoever it is, the nigga on the street that got into the fight gets caught on tape shooting that other person, they're going to jail. The police officer can be on tape shooting somebody else. He can be in front of a witness in broad daylight shooting somebody else. And then the question becomes, what excuse do we need to give in order to get this cop off? Not what is the responsibility level of a person in authority, you know, because before it was, oh, okay, now they're armed. Well, wait, now they're not armed with a gun. Now they're armed with a knife. Well, you can still kill them. Well, now the precedent has been set, Vlad. Now the bar has been set. You don't even need to have a gun. Being taller than a certain height and over a certain weight and black, and your body is a weapon that we can use as an excuse to kill you. As if that was ever an excuse to kill anybody. As if, you know, I knew a lot of kids in my college who happened to be white from suburbia, and they weren't the world's perfect people. They used a lot of drugs. They robbed a lot of people. But the difference was that when I saw the way that they were treated by law enforcement, it astounded me. As if one people were just young kids blowing off steam, and the other ones were hardened criminals in the making that needed to be taught a lesson. And until we flood out or until we get that generation of people who unfortunately became slightly racist because of how their parents raised them, you know, we're still going to continue to have these problems. And I'm still going to be arguing with people that think that racism in America doesn't exist, you know, and that's the denial argument that we have. You know, I think it's gotten so bad that we have to say without a doubt that a black president didn't expose the healing of racism in America. It exposed just how bad it was. I mean, you don't got respect for nobody, not even the president. I mean, before it was, oh my God, what a holy office. Now it's, oh, forget that. You know, before it was, oh, there she is, Miss America. Now it's, oh, there's Miss America, man, with her weave on. You know, I just don't think there's respect for our people. I don't think that we control any industries as Black and Latino people, and therefore people don't have to respect us. That's the sad part. You know, when you own something, somebody got to wipe their feet before they come in your house. But if that ain't your house, they just be walking in like it's whatever, you know, to the point where we even have a culture in hip hop now where these major artists are afraid to even talk about this or express it. Why? Because they don't want to be controversial. You know, when we had hip hop was created to address controversy, you know, not a controversy we created, but a controversy that befell our people. So, I mean, I think that that's definitely a topic for conversation. The other topic for conversation, Vlad, is that I don't think that enough people realize that what living in a military police state will actually do to you. Don't think it's just going to affect Black and brown people. No, they test it on individuals who have less power in society. And if, you know, the most uncaring elements of a society that is in control now refuse to pay attention, well, then they're just going to learn the hard way, when their interests aren't met, or when something that is in the government's interest and not in theirs, and they find themselves the victims of a slandering or the victims of a murder, and they can't do anything because who the hell's left to protest for them? I think that what we talk about when we go around the world and we have all these wars and we have all of these conflicts for resources is not only the war outside, but also, like I said, and I always say, the consolidation of power within a government and within that, And then there are people that will just say, hey, Technique, fuck all that. These cops are killing us. We got to get them back. But, I mean, that's what they expect. That's what they want. They want a violent reaction, you know what I mean? And yet they ignore every other violent reaction that they get. They were the Joe Paterno firing when people destroyed their school. Well, but they're not thugs and criminals. They're kids that are just angry and defending their coach. And yet here's someone who's a member of their community who was gunned down unarmed. And obviously, I don't agree with destroying public property for no reason. You're hurting the local businesses. But, I mean, I understand that people are angry. I always told them that you can tell, though, who's in charge by whose neighborhood you're allowed to riot in. Because make no mistake, they'll let you rip up your own shit. But if you go downtown and you tear up their state building, you're going to start getting shot at. Only what I like to see now is that unlike maybe 10, 20 years ago, there's a ton more of diversity involved in a lot of these protests, which really warms my heart. And it's the one thing that I thought was really positive about this. This affected young people. The Mike Brown shooting affected young people across the board. And I think that's where the answer lies in a lot of healing and a lot of these discussions, Vlad. I think this is something that needs to be discussed in every single high school around America. I think every kid that sees this who's in college or in high school needs to take this back to their school and say, no, we need to have a forum and a discussion about this, because those are the only people that are going to have the power to be able to change it in the future. They will, whether they know it or not, have the responsibility to be in charge of this government. And I think, Vlad, what I saw Asian people, white people, Latino people, black people, Middle Eastern people across the board, young people, women especially. I just saw a gigantic conversion of that here in Ferguson, in New York, in LA, in Oakland, in Hong Kong. Like, it's just something that young people can identify with. A friend of theirs who may have been in trouble a lot, but, didn't deserve to get killed. A friend of theirs who made a mistake, who did something wrong, but who didn't deserve to be shot down in the street, and unless we believe this pathetic narrative about someone who was bull charging them like a wild beast. I mean, even the language that people used is dehumanizing. You know what I mean? I think that what you have to look at in that case is the fact that young people identify with having friends that may not be perfect. You know why? Because they're not perfect. And yet, if we saw someone get shot like that in the middle of the street for God knows what, we would be upset. Anyone would be upset. Anyone would be heartbroken if that was their child. So I think a lot of young people see and identify with those people because they go to their school. And by those people, I mean the past dozen who have been publicized, and maybe those hundreds that haven't been publicized, that have been gunned down by police, because I think that the media likes to get specific cases. You know what I mean? There's a difference between getting a case in which a person isn't armed, or let's say there's a gang member, a guy who just happens to be a gang member walking down the street. I think what he needs to realize now, anybody who's listening to this, who's banging for anything, you walk out your door and you get shot in your hallway. Guess what? In your own building, holding your own child. Guess what? All those affiliations, all those things that make you feel cool, that's what they're going to use as a justification for killing you. They got away with shooting an unarmed father walking down a flight of stairs in his own building in Brooklyn, and they called it an accident. They can frame it however they want to now, because they're not going to court, because we won't even see an indictment. That's where we are, Vlad. And I hope that the young people watching this know that they have a lot more power than they've been told You know, they have a lot more power than they've been educated to. And that their greatest power and their greatest strength is in their diversity, is in the different walks of life that I saw out there on Brooklyn Bridge. You know what I mean? Whether you're Christian, Muslim, Jewish, Buddhist, white, black, brown, any color, you were out there. And I think there needs to be more of that. There need to be more people that realize how much more we're connected by our humanity, because that's what's going to make it change. And that gigantic, diverse group of people, you do have the power to change the world. I mean, I tell you, this government is run by fear, but don't get it twisted. The reason they're the biggest fear monger is because they're afraid of everything. You know, they bought 1 billion rounds of ammunition. You know what my response is to that, Vlad? When I hear that, people say, "Oh, they bought 1 billion rounds of ammunition." I say, well, cool. Now you only need 5 billion more, because there's 6 billion people on this earth. And if you think you can just clip some of us so that you can make things run smoothly, it's not going to work out that way. You know, I think people are waking up now, finally, and you know, the outrage is something that was needed.